Good morning, everyone. Uh, this morning I'm gonna be doing a third part of the video about Confucius. Finally, it's gonna be the last one, I hope. So the day is kind of alright. The weather is kind of cool, and I decided to make this video for the starter of the day in the morning. Pretty much this part of the Confucius trilogy is going to be about the family and the state. Uh, I keep using same dictionaries that I have, which is WordWeb and Ebilingua. Digital dictionaries, I mean, there are other ones that I also use, but digital ones, these ones. And in the cell phone, I have some other ones as well. So basically, let's start. The family and the state. Early geopolitical philosophy is represented in the class of odds, in the classic of odds and the classic of documents centered on moral justification for political authority. Moral justification for political authority based on the doctrine of the mandate of heaven. Tianming. This view was that the sage's virtue, okay, a sage is a мудрец, так, okay. This view was that the sage's virtue attracted the attention of the anthropomorphized cosmic power, usually translated as heaven, Tian, which supported the sage's rise, to political authority. This canonical text argued that political success or failure is a function of moral quality, evidenced by actions such as proper ritual performance on the part of the ruler. Confucius drew on these classics and adapted the classical view of moral authority in important ways, connecting it to a normative picture of society. Properly positioning a parallel between the nature of reciprocal responsibilities of individuals in different roles in two domains of social organization. In the Analects, Confucius linked filial piety in the family to loyalty in the political realm. Filial piety in the family to loyalty in the political realm. That's interesting. It is rare for a person who is filially pious to his parents, and older siblings to be inclined to rebel against his superior. Okay, filial piety to parents and elder siblings may be considered the root of a person. I'll try to do this one a bit faster than usually because it has four pages. It's rare for a person. Okay, this section examines Confucius' social and political philosophy, beginning with the central role of his analysis of the traditional norm of filial piety. Filial piety. I'll check this word. As far as I remember, it's connected to the authority in a family. Benevolence. Да ёпта, блядь, что ты уже... Yeah. Filial piety. Okay, just wait a second. Righteousness by virtue of being pious. Having shown or expressing reverence for a deity. Yeah. Okay, it's a kind of pity and benevolence in the family, kind of. So, just as Confucius analyzed the psychology of a ritual performance, analyzed psychology of a ritual performance and related it to individual moral development, uh, his discussion of filial piety was another example of the development and adaptation of a particular classical cultural pattern to a wider philosophical context and set of concerns. Originally limited to descriptions of sacrifice to ancestors in the context of hereditary kinship groups, a more extended meaning of filial piety was used to describe the sage king Shuns, who lived 2000 years before Christ. Uh, or maybe it means something different. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, kind of a long time ago. Shun's treatment of his describe the sage king Shun's treatment of his living father in the classic of documents. Despite humble origins, Shun's filial piety was recognized as a quality that signaled he would be a suitable successor for the sage king Yao. Confucius, in the Analects, praised the ancient sage kings at great length, and the sage king Yu for his filial piety in the context of sacrifice. However, he used the term filial piety to mean both sacrificial mastery and behaving appropriately to one's parents. In a conversation with one of his disciples, he explained the filial piety meant not contesting and that it entailed, while one's parents were alive, serving them in a ritual proper way, and after one's parents died, burying them and sacrificing to them in a ritual proper way. In rationalizing the moral content of legacies of the past, like the 3-year mourning period after the death of a parent, Confucius reasoned that for 3 years a filial pious child should not alter a parent's way, and explained the original of length of the 3-year mourning period to be the length of time that the parents had given their infant child support. This adaptation of filial piety to connote the proper way for a gentleman to behave both inside and outside the home was a generalization of a pattern of behavior that had once been specific to the family. Intellectual historian Chen Lai has identified two sets of ideal traits that became hybridized in the late Warring States period. The first set of qualities describes the virtue of the ruler coming out of politically oriented descriptions of figures like King Wen of Zhou, including uprightness. Это intellectual historian Чан Лай уже. То есть, получается, uprightness and fortitude. Ой, блядь, сейчас, wait a second. Strength of mind that enables one to endure adversity with courage. Okay. Fortitude. The second set of qualities is based on bonds specific to kinship groups, including filial piety and kindness. As kinship groups were subordinate to larger political units, texts began to exhibit hybrid lists of ideal qualities that drew from both sets. Consequently, Confucius had to effectively integrate. Okay, so consequently, Confucius had to effectively integrate clan priorities and state priorities. a conciliation illustrated in Hans' intertextual commentary The Odes by his instance that filial piety is not simply a conciliation. I'll have a look what that is. Умиротворение, успокоение. Okay. Instance that filial piety is not simply deference to elder, deference, уважение, почтение, deference to elders. When his disciple Zhengzi submitted to a severe beating from his father's staff in punishment for an offense, Confucius chastises Zhengzi. Wait. Okay. Saying that even the sage King Shan would not have submitted to a beating so severe. Okay. He goes on to explain that a child beating, but that's interesting. Chastis is to beat. So what happened is when his disciple Zhengzi submitted to a severe beating from his father's staff, So he submitted to a severe beating from his father's staff in punishment for an offense. Confucius chastises Zhengzi, saying that even the sage King Shun would not have submitted to a beating so severe. Wait, I don't understand. What's the point? So pretty much there's a guy Zhengzi, and his father has some kind of position in the society, so he has his staff working on him. So when there was an offense made by Zhengzi, his father's staff decided to beat the fuck out of him. After that, Confucius comes and chastises Zhengzi, so pretty much does the same thing. He beats the fuck out of him, saying that even the king would not have submitted to a beating so severe. Okay, so even the king would not beat you worse than I did, or than he did, or than the previous one, the staff of his father. He goes on to explain that a child has a dual set of duties to both a father and ruler, the former filial piety, and the other loyalty. The former filial piety and the other loyalty. Okay. Therefore, protecting one's body is a duty to the ruler and a counterweight to a duty to submit to one's parent. Okay, therefore, protecting one's body is a duty to the ruler and counterweight to a duty to submit to one's parent. To a duty, okay, and a duty to submit. Okay, and counterweight to a duty to submit to one's parent. Okay, so if you would like to submit your sibling or child, you should take into consideration that protecting one's body is a duty of the ruler. So there should not be such a thing used in submitting your child or sibling that is that goes into how to say, but that's there should not be such thing used to submit your child or sibling that is out of some kind of borders or out of some kind of allowed order. So if you are overstepping the order or the law, when you do the submission of your parent or of your sibling or a child, then probably you should be ready that there is a ruler who is overwatching that and who is protecting the one who you are submitting. So you should not be using improper should not be doing improper actions when doing this. Okay, so that's what it says. Counterweight to a duty to submit one's parent. In the classical of filial piety, similar reasoning is applied to a redefinition of filial piety that rejects behaviors like such extreme submission that rejects behaviors like such extreme submission because protecting one's body is a duty to one's parent. This sort of qualification suggests that as filial piety moved further outside its original family context, it had to be qualified to be integrated into a view that valorized multiple character traits. To give something a value, to fix the price, to fix the price of something artificially. Valor. Since filial piety, okay, but I haven't understood the first one yet. Still, so when his disciple Zhengzhi submitted to a severe beating from his father's staff, was submitted in punishment for an offense. What kind of offense? Confucius chastises Zhengzhi, saying that even the sage King Shun would not have submitted to a beating so severe. Saying that even the sage King Shun would not have submitted to a beating so severe. Maybe chastises is translated in some different way. Chastises. Censorship, really. Okay, блять, I don't think that Confucius would have beaten someone. Maybe, I'm not sure, but the thing is that it still may be overviewed. This word may be viewed uh, as not showing a sign of physical harm. So, chastis. Maybe let's have a look into another dictionary. Бить, пороть, сечь, карать, наказывать. It's already different. So, жестко критиковать. So, it's already completely different. He could have said that you have done an incompletely proper thing, or they have done an incompletely proper thing. So, it doesn't mean that he has beaten him also. So, that's what I didn't understand. That now I understand that he probably didn't do that. So, since filial piety was based on a fundamental relationship, defined within the family, one's family role and state role could conflict. One's family role and state role could conflict. A classic of doctrines text spells out the possible conflict between loyalty to a ruler and filial piety toward the father. A trade-off similar to a story in the Analects about a man named Ji Gong, upright Gong, who testified that his father stole a sheep. Okay, so it's, блять, сука, Павлик Морозов, нахуй, блять. It's pretty much the same thing. What I'm not too sure about what Pavlik Morozov done, but I have looked one of the videos with Puchkov, and he said that it's a completely different story, блять. That Pavlik Morozov has betrayed his father, and he told the government that his father is a stealer or a killer or some kind of thing, and that's why he is an asshole. But the thing is that Puchkov said that Pavlik Morozov actually done a bit different thing, because it's not the whole story. The whole story is that his father, and if you are interested in this, you may view or watch the video of Puchkov. I'm not too sure which one, but just search Puchkov about Pavlik Morozov, guys, or Klim Zhukov about Pavlik Morozov with Puchkov. So basically, they explained what happened there, but the thing here is the same. It's the conflict of what is more important to you, your family or your state, because that's what it says. One's family role and state role could conflict. So family role and a state role could conflict for someone. So conflict between loyalty to a ruler and filial piety toward the father. That's it's very simple. It's pretty much what it says. So a trade-off similar to a story in the Analects about a man named Ji Gong who testified that his father stole a sheep. I'll have a look what testify means. Давать показания, свидетельствовать, да, то есть pretty much he said that his father stole a sheep, and they said, you're fucking asshole, блядь, you said that your father stole a sheep, блядь, and, yeah. Okay, although Confucius acknowledged that theft injures social order, he judged upright Gong to have failed to be truly upright to a sense that balances the imperative. Повеление и распоряжение обязательное для выполнения, приказ настоятельное срочное выполнение, повелительная форма глагола. Сейчас failed to be truly upright in a sense that balances the imperative to testify with special consideration for members of his kinship group. Okay, so it could be overviewed or it could be looked at in a different way, or in a bit more broad or wide way of view. If you look at the previous video, or the first or the second video about Confucius, where I said that Confucius during his life worked in many things. He didn't he wasn't born to become a sage from like 5 years of age. Maybe he has become, maybe that's what led him to become a sage in his elderhood. But the fact is that he became popular and well-known sage when he became old. So before that, he worked in multiple fields: administration, political assistance, and all of those things. That's why this a bit reminds about advocacy, or maybe some kind of legal text. So it says that Confucius acknowledged that theft injures social order. He judged upright gong. Upright gong. Okay, upright gong. Yeah, upright gong is the son who told that his father stole a sheep. Okay, so although Confucius acknowledged that theft injures social order, he judged upright gong to have failed to be truly upright. Upright, in a sense that balances the imperative to testify with special consideration for members of his kinship group. Okay, that's what he said. That's the thing that Confucius said. So basically, he said that okay, you say that your father stole a sheep. I understand that stealing a sheep injures social order, but what you done by saying that he stole a sheep is truly being not upright. In a sense, that balances the imperative. Okay, but what he done by saying that his father stole a sheep is basically being not truly upright, uh, in a sense that balance imperative to testify with special consideration for members of his kinship group. Wait, I'll have a look. I need to check that. To have failed to be truly upright, in a sense that balances the imperative to testify, that balances the imperative to testify with special consideration for members of his kinship group. Okay, I understand. That's how I understood. It says that he said that you said that your father stole a sheep, but by saying this, you have failed to be truly upright in a sense that balances the imperative to testify with special consideration for members of his kinship group. So what that means is that there is a special there is an imperative to testify. Императив to testify is повеление давать показания, распоряжение, обязательство на выполнение, настоятельный, срочный, повелительная форма глагола, да, то есть imperative to testify with special consideration. So if you're doing testification, or if you are testifying, testifying, so you should take into consideration, or it should be made with a special consideration for members of his kinship group. So if you're testifying if you're testifying on someone or towards someone, I'm not sure what's the how it should be correctly said, but if you are testifying, then you should take into consideration that that was your father. Блять, пиздец. Блять, это пиздец. Э, In my circle, being upright differs from this. In my circle, being upright differs from this. A father would conceal such a thing on behalf of his son, and a son would conceal it on behalf of his father. Uprightness is found in this. Okay, that's interesting. So, it's interesting. So, pretty much it's said то, что, блядь, грубо говоря, никогда не надо, ну не то, что никогда не надо, блядь. What it says here, it says in his view, то есть правильное, быть правильным отличается от этого. То есть, грубо говоря, то, что там было сказано, это не совсем правильно, да, то есть отец would conceal. Concealment is such a word that can be interpreted or translated in different ways, but basically it doesn't necessarily mean lying. You just don't have to say. It. If you haven't said something that you already know, that means concealment или утаивание или что-нибудь в этом роде. Вот. Such a thing on behalf of his son. So pretty much папа ради своего сына такую хрень лучше утаит, так же, как и сын ради своего отца тоже, скорее всего, это утаит. Вот как раз-таки правильность в этом и заключается. Вот, типа... Ну, это интересно. Это интересно. Очень интересно, что скажут китайцы про Павлика Морозова. Типа, чисто из интересного. In this way, too, Confucius was adapting filial piety to a wider manifold of moral behaviors. To a wider manifold of moral behaviors, honing his answer to the question of how a child balances responsibility to family and loyalty to the state. It's interesting. The thing is that up till some age, for instance, 18 years of age, you have a bit special range of your responsibility toward state. So in some ways, parents are responsible for their kids up till this age. But I think that it doesn't necessarily collide or intersect this responsibility to family and loyalty to the state. They do not have to necessarily collide or intersect or cross or something like that. While these two traits may conflict with one another, sociologist Robert Bellah, in his study of Tokugawa in modern Japan, noted how the structural similarity between loyalty and filial piety led to their both being promoted. Being Similarity between loyalty and filial piety led to their both being promoted by the state as interlinked ideals that located each person in dual networks of responsibility. Confucius was making this claim when he connected filial piety to the propensity to be loyal to superiors. Filial piety to the propensity to be loyal to superiors. Statements like filial piety is the root of virtuous action. Statements like filial piety is the root of virtuous action. From the classic of filial piety, connect loyalty and the kind of action that signals the personal virtue that justifies political authority, as in the historical precedent of the sage King Shun. Okay, wait. Statements like filial piety is the root of virtuous action. From the classic of filial piety. Connect loyalty. Connect loyalty and the kind of action that signals the personal virtue that justifies political authority, as in the historical precedent of the sage King Shun. Of the classical sources from which Confucius drew, two were particularly influential in discussions of political legitimation. The classic of odds consists of 305 Zhou period regulated lyrics, hence the several translations, songs, odes, or poems, and became numbered as one of the 5 classics in the Han Dynasty. Critical to a number of these lyrics is the celebration of King Wen of Zhou overthrow of the Zhang, which is an example of a virtuous person seizing the mandate of heaven. The King Wen of ours, his prudent heart, careful and sensible, marked by sound judgment. Okay, the king of ours, his prudent heart was well ordered. He shone in serving the high God, and thus enjoyed much good fortune. Answering in his virtue, he came to hold the domains all around. The Zhou political theory expressed in this passage is based on the idea of limited moral universe. Limited moral universe that may not reward a virtuous person in isolation. The geopolitical theory expressed in this passage is based on the idea of a limited moral universe that may not reward a virtuous person in isolation, but in which the high God or heaven will intercede to replace a bad ruler with a person of exceptional virtue. uh, will intercede to replace a bad ruler with a person of exceptional virtue. Uh, the Classic of Documents. The Classic of Documents is a collection that includes orations attributed to the sage rulers of the past and their ministers, and its arguments often concern moral authority with a focus on the methods and characters of exemplary rulers of the past. The chapter announcement of Kang is addressed to one of the sons of King Wen and provides him with a guide for behaving as sage ruler, as well as with methods that had been empirically proven successful by the rulers. When it comes to the mandate inherited from King Wen, the chapter insists that the mandate is not unchanging, and so as ruler the son must always be mindful of it when deciding how to act. Further, it is not always possible to understand heaven, but the feelings of the people are visible, and so the ruler must care for his subjects. The geopolitical view that Confucius inherited was based on supernatural intercession to place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state. Okay. The geopolitical view that Confucius inherited. Mhm. The geopolitical view that Confucius inherited was based on supernatural intercession. To place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state. Okay, personal virtue. To place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state, but over time the emphasis shifted to the way that the effects of good government could be viewed as proof of continuing moral justification for that placement. Shifted to the way that the effects of good government could be viewed as proof of a continuing moral justification for that placement. Okay, so the geopolitical view that Confucius inherited was based on supernatural intercession. To place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state, but over time the emphasis shifted to the way that the effects of good government could be viewed as proof of a continuing moral justification for that placement. So that's interesting. The geopolitical view that Confucius inherited was based on supernatural intercession. Supernatural intercession to place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state, but over time shifted to the way that the effects of good government could be viewed as proof of a continuing moral justification for that placement. Так, okay, so the geopolitical view that Confucius inherited was based on a supernatural intercession. That's how I understand what that supernatural intercession is pretty much intercession is a prayer to God or something. Заступничество, ходатайство, посредничество, наложение вето, the action of intervening on behalf of another, the action of intervening on behalf of another. A prayer to God on behalf of another person. The act of intervening is to mediate a dispute. Okay, so was based on supernatural intercession to place a person with personal virtue in charge of the state. So it's kind of like this person, it's a supernatural intercession. So they are praying to God that some that God should bring us a proper ruler, and at one point, here it is. Here's the ruler. He is perfect. He is amazing, and that's his destiny to be the ruler of this state. And they choose him. But by the time the emphasis shifted to the way that a good government could be viewed over by the effects that are made on the state as a proof of continuing moral justification for the placement. Okay, so if there is a good effect on the state that is done by this government, so then there is a continuing moral justification for that placement. So they continue morally justifying this ruler if he does a positive effect on the state. So that's what it says, блядь. Because it was a bit fucking because it was a bit kind of complex. So Confucius himself arguably served as a historical counterexample to the classical mandate of heaven theory, calling into question the direct nature of the support given by heaven to the person with virtue. Okay, Confucius himself arguably served as a historical counterexample to the classical mandate of heaven theory, called into question the direct nature of the support given by heaven to the person with virtue. Okay. So he didn't have any support from heaven, that's what he said. But because he definitely has virtue, still, what is a question? Because no one knows what he thinks. But what you think is, I think, is still connected with virtue. It says that the direct nature of the support given by heaven to the person with virtue, calling into question. The Han period records of the historian biography of Confucius described him as possessing all the personal qualities. That's the thing, why he hasn't become a ruler. The Han period records of his historian biography of Confucius described him as possessing all the personal qualities. Probably the thing is that you don't have to be a ruler, because if everyone knows you and everyone knows your rightness, everyone understands that it's proper to behave in a way that you will support, then probably you don't have to be the actual ruler who rules the country. People just think and know what you will support, and they behave in this way, and that's how you may control what happens in the country. The Han period records of the historian biography of Confucius described him as possessing all the personal qualities needed to govern well. That's what I said. It's about that. But wandering from state to state because those qualities had not been recognized. When his favorite disciple died, the Analects records Confucius saying that heaven has forsaken me. Heaven has forsaken me. Wang Zhuang uses the phrase uncrowned king to describe the tragic situation. Confucius did not rule as king, but his work as uncrowned king may be seen in the spring and autumn annals. The view that through his writings Confucius could prepare the world for the government of a future sage king became a central part of Confucius' lore that has colored the perception of his writings since, especially in works related to the Spring and Autumn Annals and its Gaian commentary. The biography of Confucius reinforced the tragic cosmological picture that personal virtue did not always guarantee success, even when even when even when heaven's support is cited in the Analects, it's not a matter of direct intercession, but expressed through personal virtue of cultural patterns, personal virtue or cultural patterns. Heaven gave birth to the virtue in me. Heaven gave birth to the virtue in me, so what can Huan Tui do to me? As Robert Eno has pointed out, the concept of heaven also came to be increasingly naturalized. In passages like, "What need does heaven have to speak? What need does heaven have to speak?" Changing views of the scope of heaven's activity and the ways human beings may have knowledge of that activity fostered a change in the role of heaven in political theory. Changing views of the scope of heaven's activity and the ways human beings may have knowledge of that activity fostered a change in the role of heaven in political theory. Most often in dialogues with the rulers of his time, reference to heaven were occasions for Confucius to encourage rulers to remain attentive to their personal moral development and treat their subjects fairly. In integrating the classical legacy of the mandate of heaven that applied specifically to the ruler of Son of Heaven with moral teachings that were directed to a wider audience, the nature of heaven's intercession came to be understood differently. The nature of heaven's intercession came to be understood differently. In the Analects and writings like those attributed to Mencius, descriptions of virtue were often adapted to contexts such as the conduct of lesser officials. Description of virtue were often adapted to contexts such as the conduct of lesser officials and the navigation of everyday life. Conduct of lesser officials and the navigation of everyday life. Kwon Gloy, what happened Shun, Kwon Long Shun notes that in such contexts, the influence of heaven remained as an explanation of both what happened outside of human control, like political success of lifespan or lifespan, like political success or lifespan. Okay, remained as an explanation of both what happened outside of human control. Okay. Notes that in such contexts, the influence of heaven remained as an explanation of both what happened outside of human control, like political success or lifespan. Okay, so basically it says that influence of heaven is the reason of political success or lifespan. So it's not about person doing something strange, and of the source of the ethical ideal. In the Analects, the gentleman's O of heaven is combined with an O of the words of the sages, and when Confucius explains the Zhou theory of the mandate of heaven in the Elder Dai's records of rituals, he does so in order to explain how the signs of a well-ordered society demonstrate that the ruler's virtue matches heaven. In the Elder Days, he does so in order to explain how the signs of a well-ordered society demonstrate the ruler's virtue matches heaven. Heaven is still ubiquitous in the responses of Confucius to questions from rulers, but the focus of the responses was not on heaven's direct intercession, but rather the ruler's demonstration of his personal moral qualities. But the focus of the responses was not on heaven's direct intercession, but rather the rules. Okay. Okay. In this way, personal qualities of modesty, filial piety, or respect for the elders were seen as proof of fitness to serve, in an official capacity. Фитнес здесь имеется в виду, естественно, не то, что ты упражняешься, там что-то все такое, а то, что to fit. Не keep fit. Keep fit — это такое же выражение, которое там, what's your hobby, ебать, to keep fit, ебать, то есть тоже заниматься, там все такое, короче говоря, но здесь фитнес имеется в виду to fit, подходить, вот, то есть to fit, то есть оставаться в каких-то определенных ну, типа, не рамках, не кондиции или что-то вот такое вот. Вот, для того, чтобы к чему-то подходить. Вот. To serve in an official capacity. Of fitness to serve in an official. Да, вот. Вот как раз таки здесь говорится, it also says here that personal qualities of modesty, filial piety, or respect for the elders were seen as proof of fitness to serve in an official capacity. So these three are overviewed as one of these are the three qualities that are very important in being fit to serve in an official capacity. Qualification to rule was demonstrated by proper behavior in the social roles defined by the 5 relationships, a formulation seen in the writings of Mencius. That became a key feature of the interpretation of works associated with Confucius in the Han Dynasty. The Western Han emperors were members of the Liu clan, and works like the Gulian Commentary and the Spring and Autumn Annals emphasized normative family behavior grounded in the 5 relationships, which were here adapted to include mothers and sisters, ruler and the subject, a ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, siblings, and friends. Writing with particular reference to the classic of filial piety, Henry Rosemont and Roger Ames argue that prescribed social roles are a defining characteristic of the Confucian tradition. A defining characteristic of the Confucian tradition. Prescribed social roles argue that prescribed social roles are defining characteristic of the Confucian tradition, and that such roles were normative guides to appropriate conduct. They contrast this with the virtue ethics approach. They say requires rational calculation to determine moral conduct, while filial piety is simply a matter of meeting one's family obligations. And such roles were normative guides to appropriate conduct. They contrast this with the virtue ethics. Okay, so virtue ethics is the Western or European. For them it's Western, but it's European. It's not coming from there. It's coming from Greece and from there. It's like Europe. Virtue ethics approach, they say, requires rational calculation. Rational calculation it's huge because, блядь, virtue ethics it's a lot. It's said about in many philosophers look or overview virtue ethics or overview virtue. It could be better if it's said concretely or certainly about some kind of a philosopher. But it says here that approach of virtue ethics or virtue ethics approach, they say, requires rational calculation to determine moral conduct. While filial piety is simply a matter of meeting one's family obligations. So they say that filial piety is a better way to prepare, or it's a better quality to describe a ruler of the state compared to virtue ethics. Normative guide to appropriate conduct. Normative guide to appropriate conduct. So not prepare ruler of the state, but yeah, he definitely needs the appropriate conduct, but still appropriate conduct may be or should be done by everyone. And not only the ruler. So it just says that virtue ethics describes appropriate conduct worse than filial piety. Okay, just as the 5 virtues were placed at the center of later theories of moral development, Once social roles became systematized in this way, selected situational teachings of Confucius, selected situational teachings of Confucius consistent with them could become the basis of more abstract systematic moral theories. Okay, just as the five virtues were placed at the center of late theories of moral development, once social roles became systematized in this way, selected situational teachings of Confucius consistent with them could become the basis of more abstract systematic moral theories. Yet this could not have happened without the adaptation of the abstract classical political theory of heaven's mandate, a doctrine that originally supported the ruling clan, to argue that heaven's influence was expressed through particular concrete expression of individual virtue. As a result of this adaptation, in writings associated with Confucius, the ruler's conduct of imperial rituals, performance of filial piety, or other demonstration of personal virtue provided proof of moral fitness that legitimated his political authority. As with the rituals and the virtues, filial piety and the mandate of heaven were transformed as they were integrated with the classics through the voices of Confucius and the rulers and disciples of this era.